We want to start off by giving our praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakak Kadesh. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me it's true. Alright. This is Second Idris, the 15th chapter. Alright. I'm gonna start at the top. Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, said the Lord, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true. And just going into these scriptures. It was written in these scriptures, the words are faithful and true. You know, a lot of people think it's just a book, but this book is the words of the Lord, the words of Yahweh by Hashem, Yahweh Shah. Alright. Fear not the imaginations against thee. Let not the increase insiduities of them trouble thee that speak against thee. For all the unfaithful should die in their unfaithfulness. So it said, everyone who don't believe, you know, the Lord's still gonna do what he gonna do. Alright. So for all the unfaithful should die in their unfaithfulness. Alright, let's play a little bit of this article. This is Tucker, World Watching, Civilization Collapse in Real Time. Alright, and this news clip is just more fruit on the fire. These are stories like this is helping civilizations to collapse even faster. But let's go ahead and play.
Train stations on the way to work. You watch as junkies smoke meth without any embarrassment at all and then yell at pedestrians on the sidewalk, maybe at your children. Everywhere, at every intersection, there are beggars. It's what we used to imagine India was like, but this is not Calcutta. This is New York and San Francisco and Austin, Texas. So the question is, what happened? And the short answer is, our leaders did this. No matter what they tell you, homelessness is not an act of God. It's not the result of economic collapse in this country. America did not run out of housing. Instead, a determined group of well-funded ideologues decided to make it easier to live on the streets in this country while doing drugs. Therefore, many more people now live on the streets while doing drugs. See? Not complicated. In 2005, an unemployed alcoholic called Basil Humphrey enrolled in a rehab program in Boise, Idaho. When Humphrey refused to stop drinking, the rescue mission kicked him out. Those were the rules, and he spent months sleeping outside, as so many do. Eventually, local authorities ticketed him for camping on public property. That was the law. The story would have ended there, except that a huge corporate law firm in New York City called Latham & Watkins took an interest in the case on the other side of the country. Now, typically, Latham & Watkins represents Wall Street banks and prominent Democratic office holders. But the firm wanted to change vagrancy laws to increase homelessness. Why did they want that? We don't know. But the firm filed a lawsuit on Basil Humphrey's behalf against the city of Boise. That suit made it to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. In 2018, the court declared that cities have no right to criminalize homelessness.
Alright, I see one thing you can see when they showing the pictures of these people, you know, they showing a lot of Israelites, you know, homeless, which there is. But as I ride around and travel around the country, I see the most of the homeless I be seeing are actually Edomites. Alright. Now, I'm gonna read Second Ezra, continue on the 5th verse. Behold, said the Lord, I will bring plagues upon the world, the sword, famine, death, and destruction. For wickedness hath exceedingly polluted the whole earth, and their hurtful works are fulfilled. Therefore, said the Lord, I will hold my tongue no more as for touching their wickedness, which they profanely commit. Neither will I suffer them in those things. Neither will I suffer them in those things in which they wickedly exercise themselves. Behold, the innocent in the righteous blood cry unto me, and the soul of the just complains continuously. And therefore said the Lord, I will surely avenge them and receive unto me all the innocent blood from among them. Behold, my people is led as a flock to the slaughter. I will not suffer them now to dwell in the land of Egypt, but I will bring them with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm, and smite Egypt with plagues as before, and we destroy all the land thereof. Alright, so let's continue on with the story.
In fact, the court ruled cities have an obligation to provide free housing to the homeless at public expense. The Supreme Court later upheld that ruling. The case was known as Martin versus Boise, and it had exactly the effect that Latham and Watkins intended. City officials across the country no longer had an obligation to protect the public and public spaces from drug addicts who decided to live in them. At the same time, politicians suddenly had access to a massive new source of cash. Taxpayer money, many billions in taxpayer money, for something called homelessness prevention. Now, what is homelessness prevention? Well, of course, it's the opposite of what they call it, as always. Here's Seattle's interpretation of homelessness prevention.
A handful of Seattle's more than 12,000 homeless will soon be going from the street to a new apartment with stunning views of the Space Needle and Puget Sound. Using part of its share of the $1.9 trillion COVID relief package, the city bought 3 brand new apartment buildings for $50 million for 165 homeless, a price of $300,000 per unit. In Los Angeles, Skid Row is about to get a new neighbor, a 19-story high-rise for homeless, costing taxpayers $160 million, or $580,000 per unit. They're part of an expensive push to get the homeless off of sidewalks and out of city parks and into government-subsidized housing, even if it means buying new buildings at market rate from developers.
Oh, stunning views of the Space Needle in Puget Sound. Do you have one of those? Well, crackheads do. More than $500,000 per apartment to house drug addicts at public expense, at market rates. So you can see why real estate developers would strongly support a program like that, and of course they strongly do. But luxury apartments are just the beginning. Seattle's most recent municipal budget allocates more than $150 million to other so-called homelessness programs, just this year. Now keep in mind, Seattle has fewer than 750,000 people living there, so that's an awful lot of money per bum. It's certainly a lot more than anyone else is getting in Seattle. At the same time it was giving overpriced condos to drug addicts with stunning views of Puget Sound, Seattle allocated just $10 million total for its Small Business Stabilization Fund designed to keep family businesses from going bankrupt during the COVID lockdowns. So the city's priorities could not be clearer than that. You lavish money on the least productive, most antisocial parasites.
All right. As you can see from the images and him going through it, you know, they're pretty upset about them trying to get the homeless out the street with luxury condos, which is different. All right, this is the 12th verse. Israel shall mourn, and the foundation of it should be smiting with plagues, and the punishment that Yahweh should bring upon it. All right, and this is Egypt mourning, because we know America, Babylon the Great is Egypt. All right. Because Egypt was a captivity. All right. They that till the ground shall mourn, for their seed shall fail through the blasting and the hail, and with a fearful constitution. All right. So when they say they that till the ground will mourn, it's going into that the wars. All right. Woe to the word and them that dwell therein. Alright, for the sword and the destruction draw near. And one people should stand up to fight against another, and swords in their hands. For there should be sedition among men, and invading one another. They should not regard their kings, nor their prince, and the course of their actions should stand in their power. Alright, so this is people getting fed up with the decisions that their government is making. All right, this is pissing a lot of Edomites off. That they're going all out for the homeless. All right, which is kind of weird for a country to be this rich and this powerful and to have so many homeless people. But they just tell you that's just how Esau get down.
In our society, and then you punish Americans who work for a living. Got it? And it's hardly just Seattle. The latest city budget in San Francisco proposes spending $667 million on something called the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing. And yet, at the very same time, San Francisco's Department of Children, Youth, and Families gets less than half that amount. A city program designed to help low-income families pay college tuition gets just $16 million total. That's about 2% of what the homeless get. So in San Francisco, it makes sense. In fact, it pays to get high on the sidewalk. Don't bother to get an education. Nobody cares. That's the message from the city. Couldn't be clearer. In Austin, Texas, the city's budget for homelessness assistance was $68 million last year. At the very same time, the city of Austin spent just $3.5 million in new loans for struggling small businesses, and only $7 million for, quote, mission-critical infrastructure and deferred maintenance at city facilities, like the things that matter. And at the same time as this was going on, the police department in the city of Austin got an $11 million budget cut. So what happened to the homelessness in Austin, the problem they were trying to, quote, solve? Well, to no one's surprise, it has grown by 10% in just 2 years. You get what you pay for. When you pay for homelessness, you get a lot more of it.
So homelessness is growing, all right? And, as we can see, we're getting closer to these next few verses, all right? A man should desire, the 17th verse, a man should desire to go into a city and should not be able. For because of their pride, the city should be troubled, and the houses should be destroyed, and man should be afraid, all right? A man should have no pity upon his neighbors, but should destroy their houses with the sword. And we know the modern day sword is the gun, and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulations. And when these shortages and things really hit stores, if you have this many homeless people everywhere already struggling, so when they can't get nothing, hey, you know, they coming to whoever do got it. Alright? It's just part of how it's gonna go down. Alright? This is 2nd Ezra, the 6th chapter, starting at the 22nd verse. And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown. The full storehouses should suddenly be found empty. And the trumpet should give a sound which when every man hear, they should be suddenly afraid. At that time should friends fight one against another like enemies. Alright, when things get hard, it say friends are gonna fight one another like enemies. And the earth should stand in fear with those that should stand in fear with those that dwell therein. And the springs of the fountain should stand still. In 3 hours they should not run. Whoever remains from all these that I have told thee should escape and see my salvation in the end of your world. And we know when it's going into the end of the world, it's talking about the end of Esau's world and the beginning of Jacob's. And the man that are received should see it, and who have not tasted death from their birth. And the hearts of the inhabitants should be changed and turned into another meaning. And that's going into the Israelite, the 144,000, the Lord's elect, getting them new bodies. And you know, it's saying this go around, it's going to be certain people who are not going to have to taste death. We know some of us are going to have to be mortals and going to have to die and glorify the Lord that way. But them will be the first regenerated. But some people will not taste death. Alright. For evil shall be put out, and deceit shall be quenched. As for faith, it shall flourish, and corruption shall be overcome with the truth, which has been so long without fruit, and shall be declared. And we know this is corruption, alright? Having a civilization where people live this way, alright? See, they put crack into our communities for our people, and these drugs and all these different things. But now it is starting to spread out to their people. All right, and that goes to the curses in Deuteronomy 28, coming off us and going on to our enemies, as the scriptures say. All right, and we're gonna skip up to the 7th verse, 2nd Ezra 6 chapter 7 verse. Then answered I and said, what should be the pardon asunder of the times, or when should be the end of the first and the beginning of it that follows? And he said unto me, from Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were born of him, Jacob hand held first the heel of Esau. For Esau is the end of the word, and Jacob is the beginning of it that follows. So that's going into like the Edomites will be ruling the world when the Lord come back. When Yahushua, who the word ignorantly calls Jesus, come back, Esau will be ruling the world. All right, and all right, the hand of man is between the heel and the hand of the other Christian. Ezra's asked the okay, so going into that, for Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that follows. Alright, so there's a lot we didn't know. Yahushua is going to come back, and then the kingdom of Israel is going to be established. And with that, Shalom.